fifth grade. So this is going to be the reading for April 29th. And as I said, with what happened with the gerbils, I had to get a new class pet. I was hoping for a chinchilla, but I actually found something a lot cuter, and I think you all will enjoy them. I have 3. There are 2 females and a male. Back. My dog is trying to get to them. They are dwarf hamsters, and I will be introducing you them one at a time. So today, you're meeting one of the babies. This one, if I can get him, is Vlad, and he's about that big. See? Super tiny. Isn't he cute? And they are super sweet, super cuddly, and they are also animals that like to be during the day, so he's kind of tired. But I'm going to put him in his little cage so that way I can read to you all, and you can kind of watch him and get to know him a little bit. So let me put him in his cage and then turn you all around. There we go. And they do like to burrow. So I actually did not put enough stuff in there so that way you can all watch him. So let me turn you all around, okay? And let's see, there he is. Okay, so if you remember where we left off with Johnny coming across Paul Revere and looking for Dr. Warren. And he is going to, let's see, he's going to, let's see, if I remember correctly, I gotta look at it real quick, Lexington, right. He's going to Lexington to find Dr. Warren. And so far, so good. Rab is not dead yet, or hopefully at all. But we are going to start there, and we are actually, this is the last reading. So after this, we are going to be listening, you all are going to be listening to Alone Yet Not Alone. All right. So late in the afternoon of the gentle April day, Johnny came down upon Lexington Green. The smashed meeting house with its tiny wooden belfry was before him. Buckman Tavern was to his right. The green itself was laced over with the shadows of new leaves. It was here the men had stood. Here upon this green they had formed a thin, pathetic line, a handful of farmers to resist the march of 700 British regulars. Here they had died. Oh, it was so hopeless and so brave. You might laugh, and you might cry. The inside of Johnny's nose began to prick, and he brushed his arm across his face. But it was his duty to find Dr. Warren, not to stand gawking at the little battlefield. Thus far, he had had no luck at all in locating the doctor. But at last his luck turned. He recognized his chase and that rabbit-ear little pacing mare of the doctor's, hitched before the Harrington house. The doctor was standing on the steps, and about him were a group of women all crying. Johnny knew why. Jonathan Harrington, wounded in the skirmish, had been able to drag himself thus far to his own house and die upon the threshold. Dr. Warren was leaving them now. He had on no hat, but a bandage about his thick, fair hair. The bullet had grazed his scalp. Johnny went up to him and handed him the list he had had time to write down during the night at Charleston. The doctor read it, nodded, and put it in his pocket. He was too tired to say much, but there was one question Johnny had to ask. Dr. Warren, when the Lexington men stood here, and the British over there, and fired at them, I know the names of those who were killed, but when the British came back from Concord, and the fight went on all the way to Charleston, and the Lexington men went after them, I don't know who was killed then. You are hunting for Rab? Yes, I've got to find him. Nobody seems able to tell me. I'll tell you, Johnny. Tired as he was and surfeited with the sight of blood and suffering, he broke the news as best he could. Rab stood here, just about where you are standing now. He did not go when Major Pitcairn told them to disperse. He kept on standing with the other men, his musket in his hands. Johnny could see him, clear as in the flesh, Rab standing, unafraid in the cool gray of earliest dawn, the musket in his hands, the look in his eyes, that fierce, sudden look. But after that, did Rab follow the British to Charleston? No, he was wounded in the first volley. He got it pretty bad. You mean very bad, don't you? Yes, very. I see, but Johnny saw nothing. The fresh spring world turned black before him, but even in the darkness he could still see Rab, chin up, shoulders squared, not afraid. Where? He asked. He was carried to Buckman's Tavern. I saw him yesterday. I was about to go there now, but don't expect too much. No. Rab played a man's part. Look that you do the same. I will. He knew the doctor meant he wasn't to cry or take on, he'd got to take it quietly. Dr. Warren whistled to his mare, who followed him like a dog. Johnny entered the tavern on Warren's heels, and to their right was the tap room, full and overfull. Johnny half heard the same conversation going on here that he had listened to when he had stopped to buy food at the other tavern. Had they all been heroes, or did they just talk and do nothing? Rab never had said much, but he had done all a man might. The boy had been carried to a back chamber on the second floor. He was not in bed, but sitting up in an armchair propped with pillows. A woman of the inn had been sitting with him, quietly knitting. She had got up when the doctor and Johnny entered the room and left without speaking. Johnny had been fearful that Rab would be suffering, crying out, struggling like other wounded men he had seen, afraid that with death so close, something of that aloof dignity he had always had would be shattered. He had lived with Rab a year and a half, and yet he had never really known him, not known him inside out as, say, he had known and hated Dove. But half sitting as he was, Rab did not seem, at first, very different from always. His face was white, but not drawn. The eyes very dark and wide. Rab smiled. You got out all right? Yes. How's Boston? The British are furious that we licked them so. There was a sudden trickle of blood at one corner of his mouth. Rab wiped it away. In those few hours his hands had grown white, weak, thin, and as he turned his face, the afternoon fell across it. Johnny saw the flesh seem translucent. There were lavender circles about the eyes. I've had a lot of time to think, said Rab at last. Just lying here. Do you remember that market woman who lost her pig? Its name was Myra, and it could do tricks. Then I looked up, and you were standing there, looking like a robber boy, with your hand in your pocket. I remember. Rab lay with his eyes shut for a little while, remembering other things perhaps Johnny did not share. Back into his childhood in Lexington, the important and unimportant things jumbled together, a favorite dog, the death of his father, the first day he went to school, and the first day he drilled with the Minutemen. He moved a little restlessly and said, Colonel Nesbit, remember, and he told me, go buy a pop gun, boy. Well, a pop gun would have done me just as well in the end. This idea fretted him a little. Dr. Warren wet a cloth in a basin of water and wiped his bloody mouth. There's my musket, over there. It's better now than any they have. I was always kind of bothered to think I might have to stand up to them without a good gun in my hands, but I had it all right. He was thanking Johnny for getting it for him, but I never did get it to fire it. They shot first. The trickle of blood became a stream. Dr. Warren was bending over, holding his shoulders. Johnny walked disconsolately about the chamber. He looked out the window. He picked up a pewter candlestick and examined the maker's mark. He heard Warren saying, Steady, boy, and, after a moment, Is it better so? It is. Better so, Rab whispered. But the next moment, he said quietly, quite naturally, Johnny, Johnny went to him, sat on the floor beside his chair, and put his hands over Rab's thin ones. Yes, Rab, you can have that musket. I sort of like to think of it going on. I put a better stock on it, changed the angle of the steel. Look at that flint. The one it had was too smooth. I've napped it. I'll take good care of it. And there's another thing you can do for me. Anything. Go to Silsby Cove. See if the woman have come back yet from hiding. Grandsire will be about. He said he wouldn't go off hiding. He'd sit it out in his chair. I'll go. Then Rab began to smile. Everything he had never put in words was in that smile. But as he was leaving the room, Johnny saw that once more Dr. Warren was bending over him. He heard him say, "How is that? Is it better?" "Yes, it is better so." At Silsby Cove, there were no women, children, or farm animals about except a couple of weaned calves in the calf pasture. When the warning came, it had probably been decided they were too hard to catch and cart. Johnny looked at the deserted barn. Hens were about. They could live for days on the spilled oats and rye. There were 2 dogs who came up to him, telling him they had not been fed. "I'll bet they took you with them," said Johnny, "and you sneaked back home, eh, boys?" The cat stuck close to Johnny. It was a big orange Tom, and Johnny knew it was Grandsire's favorite. It was meowing and rubbing up about him. He picked it up. "You wouldn't be bothered to go out and catch a mouse in the barn like other cats, would you?" he said. But if Grandsire had not gone away to hide like the other non-combatants, he wondered why he had not fed the animals. He entered the old house, which was unlocked. The Tom, confident that now he would be fed in the elegant way he was accustomed to, began to knead his paws, and his purring grew hoarse with triumph. "Grandsire," Johnny called. There was no answer. In the red armchair, where the old gentleman usually sat since his game leg had grown so bad, was empty. Major Silsby was not there. Johnny went to the larder and found bread and sour milk for the animals. He welcomed this small duty. It kept him from thinking. The Tom he fed in the kitchen. The basin of food for the dogs he put in the yard. Where was the old gentleman? Suddenly he had an idea, and he ran back into the kitchen and looked over the hearth. Grandsire's old gun was gone, and so was the powder horn he had carried to Louisburg back in 1745, and so was Grandsire Silsby. Johnny walked back to the village, his head bent and his hands in his pockets. A numbness, half emotional, half physical, was stealing up through him. His feet felt like lead. His mind seized upon little trivial things, like the orange tomcat of Grandsire Silsby's. He noticed a jubilant little girl with a grenadier bearskin hat on her head, half over her face. He could not help but notice the regimental number on the cap. The grenadier, likely dead by now, had been a soldier of the 10th. He saw Dr. Warren's chaise before Buckman's Tavern. In the lower entry, Dr. Warren was waiting for him. "Rab?" The doctor dropped his eyes. "Sometime," he said, "we will know how to stop bleeding like that. We don't now. He sent me away because he knew he had to die?" "Yes, he knew." Dr. Warren moved into the empty parlor of the inn, away from the noisy group in the tap room, telling over and over of their great deeds. "There's no need for you to go upstairs." Johnny nodded. He had moved off into a strange, lonely world where nothing could seem real, not even Rab's death. The woman of the inn came in on tiptoe. She had a tray of food for Doctor. Tired out, the young man sank into a chair, his fair, bandaged, aching head in his hands. "You remember that night," he said, "that last meeting of the observers? James Otis came, although we didn't want him to. I can't remember much of what he said, but I remember how his words made the goose skin on my arms. I'll never forget it. He said, "So a man can stand up." Yes, and some of us would die, so other men can stand up on their feet like men. A great many are going to die for that. They have in the past. They will 100 years from now. 200. God grant there will always be men and good enough, men like Rab. The quiet woman came in again. She had tossed up an omelette for the doctor and silently put it before him. "Will you go up and fetch down the musket from the back chamber?" he asked her. She nodded and did as he asked. Dr. Warren began to eat as doctors will even under greatest restraint. "Can't you eat, boy?" "Not yet." "Try and get some sleep." "No." Johnny was on his feet pacing about the room. He was too stunned to feel much now. Later, he thought, tomorrow, next day, then I'll know that Rab is dead. But it can't hurt me now. But next year, all my life. His eyes caught on the musket. He took it up, holding it close to the light of the window, fingering and examining it to see those improvements. Rab said he had made it on it. Rab had not taken one shot with it on Lexington Green. Never had a chance. Dr. Warren was standing beside him. Johnny, Johnny, put down the gun. Here, by this window. Lay your right hand down, like that, so. Johnny felt no more shame over his burned hand. He did as the doctor bade him. He felt the cool, clean hands, bending his fingers, twisting his thumb until he gritted his teeth. "Johnny, that hand is not as bad as you think. Burned, wasn't it?" "Yes." "As you stood there holding that gun, it was the first time I've had a good look at it." "Was it kept flat while healing?" "No." "I suppose your master called in some old herb woman to care for it?" "A midwife, yes." "Bah, these midwives! Any doctor in Boston would have known. You see, the thumb is pulled about like that, not because of any basic injury, but by scar tissue." "What do you mean?" "I mean that if you have the courage, I can cut through the free the thumb. My hand good and free once more? I can't promise too much. I don't know whether you can ever go back to your silver work, but not even Paul Revere is going to make much silver for a while. Will it be good enough to hold this gun?" "I think I can promise you that." "The silver can wait. When can you, Dr. Warren?" "I've got the courage." "I'll get some of those men in the tap room to hold your arm still while I operate." "No need, I can hold it still myself." The doctor looked at him with compassionate eyes. "Yes, I believe you can. You go walk about in the fresh air while I get my instruments ready." Johnny stood upon the green and looked about him. He heard a woman calling, "Chick, chick, chick." From a nearby cow shed, he heard milk sputtering into a pail, a tap of metal on metal. His trained ear told him a gunsmith was at work. He could smell turned earth and gummy buds, and sweet wood somewhere burning. His nostrils trembled. Almost could they recapture the gunpowder of yesterday. So fair a day, now drawing to its close. Green with spring, dreaming of the future, yet wet with blood. This was his land, and these his people. The cow that lowed, the man who milked, the chickens that came running, and the woman who called them, the fragrance streaming from the plowed land and the plowman. These he possessed. The skillful hands of the unseen gunsmith were his hands. The old woman throwing stones at crows who cawed and derided her was his old woman, and they his crows. The wood smoke rising from the home hearths rose from his heart. He felt nothing could hurt him on this day, not Rab's death, nor the surgeon's knife. He felt free, light, unreal, and utterly alone. Tomorrow, next day, it would be different, but today is today. Then far away, but coming nearer and nearer down along Minatomi Road, he heard the throb of a drum, men coming back from Charleston. He stood, turned his head to listen, the shuffle of feet, a fife began to toot. It was ill played, maybe a foolish tune, but Johnny warmed to hear it. For once more, Yankee Doodle was going to town. Everywhere else in the village was silence. The music, small as the chirping of a cricket, filled with that silence. Down the road came 20 or 30 tired and ragged men. Some were blood-stained, no uniforms, a curious arsenal of weapons. The long, horizontal light of the sinking sun struck into their faces and made them seem much alike, thin-faced in the manner of Yankee men, high-cheekboned, unutterably determined. The tired men marched unevenly, but Johnny noticed the swing of the lithe, independent bodies, the set of the chin and shoulders. Rab had been like that. Please God, out of this New England soil, such men would forever rise up ready to fight when need came, the one generation after the other. Close on the heels of the marching men was an old chaise containing their commanding officer. For if you couldn't get to the fight on foot, you went on horseback, and if not on horseback, you went in a chaise. It was Grandsire Silsby, with his old gun across his knees. Johnny started to run to him, to shout, "Grandsire, Grandsire, you haven't heard yet! Rab is dead!" But he knew the old major wouldn't stop. He had to get his men on to Cambridge and the siege of Boston. True, Rab had died. Hundreds would die, but not the thing they died for. A man can stand up. And that is the end. So, Johnny Tremain, a little bit of a story about a boy during the Revolutionary War and the stuff and everything that he had to go through. Don't forget to answer your 5-question quiz at the end. Make sure to answer question number 6. It's especially important for you all to answer that one. I think that one, it shouldn't be graded. I'm going to try and make it not, well, I can make it not worth a point. So, but yeah, please just make sure to answer question number 6. I hope you all had fun watching Vlad. He is, as I said, they are day ones, and so therefore they're not too busy, and he's just a little tired. And then tomorrow, you will meet the other ones. All right. See you all soon. Bye.